Let's go live, guys. Hello and welcome. This is Jan Rogrud from Los Angeles here today. Super excited to have Chris Boggs on the line here. In fact, we're seeing him live. Chris, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jan. It's a great pleasure to speak with you again, and especially to chat about marketing with you.
Yes, likewise. I'm fired up. In fact, we're going to cover a number of things here today. And for some of you, we've obviously seen you out in the marketplace at conferences, etc. Chris and I know each other for many years, and actually spoke at SEMPO a couple of years ago down in San Diego. And Chris, you're still a board member there at SEMPO, right?
Yes, 13th year I think it's that I'm on. I've moved on to being more of a tenured board member where I can just grumble every once in a while. There's a lot of current active sort of fresher board members that are in the senior executive positions of the board right now, and it's fun to kind of watch the cycle, because a lot of what we talk about at the board this year and last year is kind of similar things that we talked about at the board 8 years ago, but with an updated sort of tint to it from the industry perspective. So I've really enjoyed my time being on SEMPO. I've always considered it as kind of like my give back, it sounds cheesy, but to the community. I've never kind of had sort of a business development intent out of it, and I think that's helped me to really just take SEMPO for what it is, and an opportunity to help promote awareness and education and networking, within the industry. And where SEMPO is now, we've grown really big with cities, and we're getting a good kind of global local thing together. It's a model we've tried over the years with relative success, but I'm really excited about how SEMPO is going and which directions it's going now in 2019 still.
Wow, that's awesome. Great summary there. And yeah, I know we have Michael Bonfils, right? And we have Mike Grehan and a number.
We have a lot of mics. We have 5 mics on the board, I think.
Oh, 5 mics. Yeah. Keep it with the last names there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. That's awesome. And also, Chris, as you see here live, we're looking at Web Traffic Advisors here, webtraffic.com. Yeah, that is your current site, right?
Yes, it's Cobbler Shoes. I don't think I've made many edits to it. I have to admit, I've been extremely busy the last few years, but it's still accurate in terms of what I'm doing and so forth. But I just throw that disclaimer out there. I need to put some new videos up too. There's like 2010 stuff up there.
Oh, right. Yeah, there's some great videos here. Actually, I looked at one of these, and it's just great to see from the old days. But man, it's amazing. Some of these things and these nuggets, and we'll hear more about them today, but still valid, right? I mean, it's kind of amazing because people are looking for that last, piece of current thing that is working right now. Well, the basics work, and we'll be talking about that here for sure. And one of the things that you do here, I noted, is to enable companies and agencies both to design, develop, implement, measure, and involve in their online marketing, right? And there's 2 sides to that coin, as I just said, the agency side, the in-house, the I don't want to say out-house, but there's many facets to this. And
it's a good name for some agencies.
It is, yeah, exactly. One of the things, and it's funny, we've shared some cold brews, etc., but I never knew your history, your background a little bit. Can you kind of break that down? I know you have some international aspects, even some language skills that are beyond the United States. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, you can kind of see a little bit in the background. I was born in Belgium. My mom is Belgian, and I'm half Belgian. I have a lot of Belgian family. I also have some of my old license plates from, where I've moved around, kind of adorning my office. But I lived in Holland for some time, and I lived in France. I don't have any French license plates. They'd probably send, the secret police after me. But the luck of that, my father was a diplomat, was that I learned French growing up. It was actually kind of my first language when I was living in Bordeaux, when I first started going to school, working. And then I went to Australia, where I actually was in a French school there and starting to learn English and stuff before we came back to Holland, where I learned some Dutch. I still speak French pretty well. The Dutch is harder to come because it's hard to, find people that want to speak Dutch together. But when it arrives, it arrives, and it's kind of it's something that I'll always cherish. It's given, it fit well with me growing up. I was able to, learn to meet a lot of new people, different people with different backgrounds, skin colors, religions, and everything like that. So I've always grown up as someone that doesn't have any sort of natural tendencies kind of against certain types or whatever. So it's helped me, I think, develop through my life as kind of the son of a diplomat in kind of a diplomatic way. And I credit a lot of my interrelation skills to growing up like that.
That's very interesting. Yeah, and in fact, I've seen many of your videos through the years, and at the various search conferences, on the panels, and listening to you speak. And obviously, there's the idea of a subject matter expert, but that next level, like you were talking about there, the sort of the interaction, the just understanding the other side of the table or of the discussion, and having this sort of connection. I can clearly see where you're coming from on that, because that's kind of unique, and it shines through in your videos. So that's very cool.
Thank you. It's something that, especially when I was with bigger agencies like Rosetta, which came from Brulant, and then was ultimately acquired by Publicis. And before that, I was with Razorfish, which was ultimately acquired by Publicis. So, I learned that at the agency level, especially, there is a clear dichotomy typically between the subject matter expert and the project managers. People that have the dual skill set are harder to come by, and frankly, harder to keep, right, from an agency perspective. So it makes a lot of sense to compartmentalize a lot of that in order to, work out the way that you're going to deliver at an enterprise level. And I know we're going to talk about some of this in a little bit, but point is that there is a key difference, between subject matter experts and project managers, account type services. And I by no means ever want to come across as saying that one is more valuable than the other, because in some cases it's really the project and the account person that's getting the stuff through. That's not really, rocket science type of recommendations, but it's such a complex organization that you're working with or whatever, that it requires those people skills to be able to shepherd through the recommendations that you want to implement, I've found. So I'm lucky in that I've grown on both sides, and I really owe a lot to the great project managers and account people and executives that I worked with for so many years at those agencies, because I essentially learned what they did while still being a subject matter expert. And that enables me to do kind of what I do and be a diplomat in the marketing and business field as well, in a way.
Yeah, no, that's some some key points there, and some great assets. My background, as you know, is mostly from the technical realm and website development, app development, way back in the day, compiler design. And so that's really served me well also through the years, and be able to sit at the table where you have the CEO, the IT person, maybe somebody from, marketing, sales, etc. You have the database developer there, just key personnel, and trying to bind that communication and really forward that discussion to an agreeable place without anybody just huffing out of there with a red-faced kind of like, I'm not on this team kind of attitude. So there's definitely
I say so many times, like, I'm very careful to not ever piss off developers, right, in a meeting, or an IT person, because you never want to make them mad. But it's the geek and Greek, right? And at the same time, you got to speak the geek and you got to speak the Greek or the marketing, and at the same time, not step on or especially not make anyone look bad, right, based on what you're saying. So there's a lot of that dynamic that works that you have to do, right, in an advanced business setting in order to make things move forward without making people angry.
Yeah. And really, I've transitioned more from sort of the tech to more the marketing and sales side. And, I find that to be way more complex, because, again, don't want to undermine developers or, the notion of, creating advanced software and tools and systems in that regard. But, we're dealing with the human mind, and psychology. And, man, you got to be on your game when you're sitting in those meetings. So I'm lucky to have Chris here to help on this today. And we're going to dive into some really cool things right now. And I I wanted to talk about agencies, really agency models and structures. I come from that side. Obviously, you've made you're doing that right now. But and I'm also going to get into a little bit of this. We're going to first talk about the structure and these models and what you see as sort of the, and I'll use the best in quotes, right? Air quotes right here, best model to serve their clients, but also this idea of, lifestyle versus not, right? Just to give an example, Chris, I have a friend here, been very successful, still is, of course, built a 150 people organization. We started really 10 years ago, both of us sort of similar time frame.
Wow, congratulations.
Go that, 150, huge lease, overhead, payroll, people, staffing, training, you name it, right? All the things that you know very well. Me, eight people on a team here, contractors, very nimble, more boutique size, and lifestyle sized, right? So I just want to kind of talk about team structure, the agency model a little bit, and what you see as some of the trending and some of the places to be able to serve well in terms of the customers, their clients in 2019 and going forward. I know there was just a lot there, but you can handle it.
No, yeah, and I'm actually cheating by looking back at a deck. I did a couple of years in a row where I spoke on this topic at PubCon in Las Vegas, and I did a panel on building agency teams, and then the next year I did one on, or I guess building an efficient and effective agency team was 2016, and then originally I did the way that, the kind of higher level up of that, right, which was how I see teams, and I typically broke it down from back then, and I think it's still mostly the same. You could probably see some differences, but you could say that the agency models are, there's the small or single channel agency, such as for example, an SEM firm that specializes in link building, right? And they have built an agency to deliver mostly against one of the elements of SEO, and are typically in those cases led, the boss, the CEO's actually also the lead expert, right? And the lead subject matter expert. And what I've seen happens in those agency structures is that person ends up having a right hand, and then they basically build a team that's somewhat, depending on skill sets and people come in, and it's very fluid, right? And with a small SEM firm that has a lot of subject matter expertise at the top, that can work well in terms of trying to replicate, expertise down. Now, what ends up happening in my experience is that the top people have to end up spending time doing more sales and less time, being a direct influence on the strategy and the final output. And that can be a point of weakness, right? Where the quality control essentially can degrade quickly from that right hand down. Is kind of one summary point from that model. I think it's a great model because it's proven itself over the years in our industry that's only 20 years old that it can work. There's plenty of internet millionaires in our industry that specialized in just link building, right? And it can work, and it can work well, but it's perilous in that the quality control, and plus, like if it's link building, you never know, if your tactic might suddenly not work anymore, things like that, right? So that's one model. Any thoughts on that one before I shift over to a couple different types of sort of larger agency models to break it out that way?
Yeah, no, I like that. And you mentioned weakness, right? Every sort of side of this model has a pro and a con probably, right? And for a client, I find that, if you're, let's say in that link building example, you obviously you want to serve the client, right? All the latest tactics, strategies, tips, insights, service from both the strategic level and obviously execution tactics, etc. But the point of the person who has sort of the lead strategy, if you will, and the lead expertise, the core, is out doing sales and biz dev. Those are some of the things that, frankly, we struggle with, right? And there's a balancing act clearly there. But, the end result is you provide results. And so if you're doing that and you can do it well as you're growing within that context, I think you've got it made.
Yeah, and it depends on your right-hand man or woman, right? And you're hiring, if you hire the right people and they assimilate quickly, it's just, that's the nature, right? The smaller of an org you are, it's like keyword density, right? Subject matter expertise density in a way, right? As you have to keep it up there in order to deliver well. And trust, right? The next type typically that, and I actually have a slide in here which shows Ronald McDonald next to the Burger King, and it says the same but different. And that's what I was just talking about a minute ago in regards to subject managers versus account directors, right? So it's definitely something that is, important, and as well as the rest of the slide would be, but apparently that's another version of that deck. So let me just pull something else open here. So the other one where I recapped and I went into some of the actual team issues shows two styles of enterprise agency model, right? One is where you see what I would say it's more reminiscent of a traditional marketing firm. And I don't have an MBA, to be honest, right? But I've been through a lot of meetings that you could say that I've learned a lot from that style and perspective of understanding organizational structures and workflows. But you have a sort of a C model with divisions below the C's, right? So there's the CEO, and then there's the CMO, COO, Chief Financial Officer, CFO. That's pretty much, they have their areas, but the COO and the CMO come into play then, depending on the delivery. So if it's an agency that's building sites and marketing, then they're both very influential in how they're building their teams to serve clients, right? And then you build under the CMO, you can build the marketing functions. Now, and obviously, under the chief operating officer, you might have actual client services. And this is where it can switch to a different type of model and how much you want to go into verticals, right? And so the other big enterprise model is to have your media channels, right? And then you have verticals that are really the ones that are leading the client. Brulant was like that. It's kind of a classic consulting, Accenture type model too, right? Where you have an entire team of people that are dedicated to financial services, another team to healthcare, another team to e-com, another team to B2B. And then those teams are served internally in the agency by channel teams, right, that are doing paid media, SEO, display, web building, and everything, right? So that's the big nuance that I found is still kind of the two biggest ways to structure the large agency effectively to be able to set up, especially working with the huge multinational companies, to set up the right teams with the right, it's a lot of account managers needed and stuff like that. Maybe a little too much in a lot of cases of spending time setting up meetings and stuff like that versus spending hours on subject matter expertise. But I won't drill us down into that rabbit hole. Point is that these complex structures have grown just kind of like, we've all grown to creating jobs everywhere, and we're humans, and, we continue to grow and create jobs, and we deliver. The big complex agency models, I think it's a little bit, it's created some extra layers, right? So I like the verticals, but at the same time, then you get into these conflicts between the vertical account director and the channel account director that wants to pitch something to a client, and then the vertical account director says, no, this is my client. I want to control it this way and everything. So you do end up, we talk about possible frailties, is you end up with some internal friction sometimes, right, between the vertical teams and the horizontal teams, as you could look at it, from a channel perspective. So that I'll shut up for a second now for your thoughts and ideas on some of that differences.
Yeah, no, this is extremely illuminating and refreshing to have this conversation, obviously from a smaller sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people shop up to these big organizations and enterprise level kind of discussions. But one of the things that I have a question about when you talk about that is how are budgets assigned, sort of from just a broad stroke perspective, and then individually into these buckets, because clearly any new client engagement is not always, we got $10 million and we're ready to go, just, hire up and let's go. That's a sort of a weird scenario, right? But how do you best manage that kind of, you talked about that internal friction there, and I'm sure there's going to be discussions and fighting over like who gets the next project, how the money flows, budgets, etc. How is that ultimately controlled?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different ways, and of course, it comes down to the humans that are involved, right? Obviously, first and foremost, and the specific, there's another kind of old saying that no matter what company you go in to work with, especially in SEO, for example, you'll find that the CEO is more closely aligned to technical or marketing, right? And one is the leader. So you're going to have to forever more than kind of, give deference to the technical side as being the lead, but also show to the marketer that, hey, we're taking care of you too, right? Even though we're more focused around technical. There's a lot of different ways that I could answer kind of what you just said. One of the things that I would say is that, the typical model for an agency is that you want to charge hourly, maybe a blended hourly rate, and that's how you figure out what you're going to charge the client, right? And so let's say the client is a flat $1 million, then you want to allocate before that's signed, you want to allocate where that money's going, right? There might end up being some magic fourth quarter money that comes in for additional media budget or whatever, and you can deal with that later. But you should be pretty prescriptive about saying that, okay, SEO is going to get this, display is going to get this, the account team is going to get this. And often the account team is going to get a lot of hours or budget because they actually are at that higher blended rate. So it all gets worked out, as you know, in spreadsheets. Like if you can get the $20 intern to do twice as many hours, that's great, right? But you also want the $280 or $500 or $800 an hour against the project partner or chief level officer to have fewer hours, right? So part of that is that internal battle, and that the really ones that succeed, those account directors, are the ones that keep the big executives at bay, keep enough, subject matter expertise involved with guiding the lower cost, because then they can return a good margin. And that's what everyone's happy about, frankly, in an agency. As long as the client's happy and you've got a good margin, then everyone's happy, right? So the internal conflicts as per se, I don't think that they come into play from a budgeting perspective until you start to have too many meetings, right? And then that's going to come down to the account director saying, okay, wait a minute, we're spending way too many hours on this 1 month of deliverables, right? And you guys are shooting my margin. And that's from the agency perspective what they have to deal with sometimes, and a lot of times actually, because the first and most important thing for any ethical agency is the client, right? So if the client says they want something again or it's not good enough, then there's going to be more hours. So it's a circle, and then there's more internal meetings and then the margin gets worse. And that's, to me, where the friction occurs, not so much as like fighting for scraps as per se, in my experience, right? I, of course, want to go tell them, hey, I want $100 million for SEO, but I know that it costs $100 million for paid search, but it couldn't cost $100 million for SEO, right? Unless you're, who knows what you were doing for that. There's going to be some logic there too, right? Typical shares that go to typical buckets should probably be adhered to for everyone to, be copacetic.
Yeah. Oh,
is that kind of what you were asking?
No, I mean, you're covering everything I was thinking there, Chris. So yeah, that's killer. I really appreciate these levels of details, and obviously this is just an ongoing kind of discussion about opportunities that exist. And I know that in your business, you do a lot with this in terms of finding gaps and optimizing these processes and helping organizations do better, both on the agency side and the client side. And so this is awesome. One of the things, though, that as I'm thinking about this, we talked a little bit about sort of the more nimble, smaller organization, now the big enterprise. And if we were to get back to sort of, and again, there's going to be some generalization here, obviously, in this question, but Are you seeing any trends or shifts in terms of our clients looking for more and when I say nimble, I don't mean necessarily always small, right? Because at the end, every client wants results, right? I mean, it's like, hey, profitable results, we'll take them all day long, and then we'll reinvest, right? But nimble, smaller organization, perhaps, high throughput, contractors versus hire in-house. Are you seeing any trends or shifts in terms of clients? Yeah, we really just need smaller teams now. We're going to take that expert knowledge, we're going to transfer some of that, and we're going to hire some essential staff inside or in-house, but we're going to use smaller teams outside. We don't want these big agencies just, chugging down money and lining their pockets, so to speak. And again, generalizations here, because this is unfair of me to say that people are just always doing this. But, I hear both sides of this discussion, and I'm just curious about what you think about this in current time.
In a word, yes. Yeah, I mean, if everything you just said is exactly what I'm seeing. In fact, I got a brand new client that is a huge brand. Someday I'll maybe turn them in for a case study or something and finally go for an award. But they haven't in the past engaged in e-commerce. They bought in a global director of digital marketing who knew me and knew of other entities, right? I bid for the work and I'm their SEO, right? And now they're working with an agency to do a redesign of their e-com platform, and I'm basically a consultant versus a couple other pitches that they had from full-fledged, as it were, SEO agencies. For many of the reasons that you just outlined in your highly loaded question, it's why it's happening, right? It's because people want that delivery. They want to cut through the BS of 17 meetings. They want an actual opinion and a recommendation, which seems to be sometimes harder to get if people are playing politics or being too careful. And they want to think that more of their money is going to subject matter expertise, I think is kind of a way that I would summarize what you just said in the way that I've been seeing some of my wins. Now, that being said, the opinion that you never got fired by hiring IBM still exists out there, right? And there's going to be a lot of big companies that are going to continue to go with the big agencies that are doing a good job, right? As long as they're ethical and moral agencies and they're delivering, it doesn't matter if it costs more and their fat is more or whatever. If the client can't afford it and doesn't care as much about the streamlining of costs, they're going to feel generally safer in most cases going with a big agency, right? If it's that level budget. So I think that's the trend is certainly that there's more people going that way or thinking about that, and there's more opportunity for consultants. Part of it, I mean, I'm a little bit of a lucky situation here, right? I mean, I used my own name starting early in my career when I was involved in search engine watch forums and everything like that. So I've built a big personal brand over the years that kind of carried through and was actually useful to some of the agencies that I worked for in helping to build their brand for search. So you got to kind of build it to get there to be able to put yourself into a position to be able to win this kind of business. But, my model, and I'm not trying to make this salesy, but it is streamlined in that I'm working with other freelancers, right? And other people that are actually right now working for agencies that need extra money, that I pay well. I'm not paying Fiverr or something like that. And I've got people that I trust that I can get to do, the writing titles and descriptions or doing parts of the technical strategy and audits and stuff like that. And parse this work out, and I can make a little bit of money off it, but save typically in comparative basis towards a big agency. One of my slogans is that I do agency, level work at consultant level pricing. Obviously some consultants are more expensive. The one other thing that I'll say to that is that this is not a new trend in the rest of the world. When I went to Brazil in 2010 to keynote a conference, it's like everyone was like, "What's your freelance?" Because people all freelance there, and it was almost like it was expected, even if you worked at a big agency, that you were doing something else and freelancing too. So I would say that America, in a way, is catching up a little bit in that perspective, because I've seen. You could argue you've seen consultants be more successful with global and European companies in terms of getting in there. This is only a 20-year-old industry we're talking about, right, from an SEO and search perspective.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I actually had on my list to ask you about the international aspects and some of the trends in the marketplace. So this is a great summary. Now, as I'm sort of going through my checklist here, what is the primary way, because as you know, we talked about freelancers, consultants, a lot of folks, hey, I'm a freelancer too, and hey, I'm an agency owner now, and it's a lot of these fly-by-nighters out there. And again, not trying to just generalize and make this a true statement, but we're seeing these patterns, right? And they come and go, and as a watcher of the industry, we see these things, right? But if a legit person who has industry knowledge, perhaps they worked at a company for years and they're sort of breaking free now, and they're going out, and maybe it's a husband and wife team and doing amazing things with, Pinterest marketing, or, a segment of sort of the search or marketing space, or digital marketing, I should say, sort of as the umbrella term. What would be, in your mind, the best ways that they can capture new clients and start engaging really new business, just sort of from a startup kind of angle?
Well, first of all, I mean, you're going to have to do some of that brand building, and even if it's recent, starting to participate, getting, search engine journal is a great. There's a lot of them out there, Search Engine Land. But I know that Search Engine Journal hires "quote unquote" writers, right? And they're not paying them, but it's a great platform to be able to write and show what you know. And then as you can start to show some references of what you do. Oh yes, I'm a writer for such and such. Maybe you can go speak at some local conferences and so forth. If you want to launch a business, in this business, you're going to have to do a little bit of that brand building, because that's kind of the checkboxes that people are ultimately looking for. What have you written? What do you speak? What kind of, how are you seen by your own industry peers in a way that you're accepted into these kind of communities, and you're communicating in a useful and productive and symbiotic manner within these industries. Part of that has to be done. You can't just decide, oh, I hate working for an agency, I'm just going to go do my own thing and then buy Google ads, right, to get people to me, because then they're going to be like, well, who are you? Oh, you worked at an agency? Well, okay. So the other part of it then is going to be getting a client or two that are willing to really go to bat for you, right, and that have and are persuasive as references for you. Because what I found was, when I just launched on myself, even though I'd had built a good referral basis, is that I still had to provide some referrals and provide some proof that I wasn't just some guy who decided to leave an agency, right? And again, I had a lot of that other stuff that I could point to, and I've been very lucky to not do outbound marketing, and I typically just get leads, right, through references. And I know that not everyone can get that, so you're going to have to go to build some of that infrastructure. It is a wide open space still. There's organizations like SEMPO and Moz and so forth, where there's communities that you could tap into, being able to network with people that are local. And you could maybe even want to just partner at first, right? Look for like a strong agency that needs overflow protection. That's been a few of my engagements over the last few years, have been like 3 to 4 month engagements supporting an agency for a huge brand, because the agency lost their SEO director to some other huge brand, right? So people need those kind of people. And so position yourself in a lot of different lights. Don't just say, oh, I'm going to go out and do I mean, maybe you can, but don't just say, I'm going to go out and do SEO for car dealers, and I'm just going to start knocking on car dealers' doors, because if you limit yourself, it's dangerous, I think, especially at the early level of trying to break out into the industry, and especially if you don't have some of that background and frame that I was describing to support what you want to do in growth. So yeah, in summary, one is participate in the communities and develop some kind of presence that you can point to that shows that you know what you're talking about in a community of peers. And then the other is to actually, proactively develop a strong referral source or sources that will vouch for you. And that could be that you're thinking about leaving an agency and you take a side client for a year and you build them up from nowhere, or you really kick ass for them. Then you're able to, when you come out into the real world, you've got that one client, first of all, hopefully, since you've kicked butt for them. And then secondly, they can act as your evangelist. Maybe they've already have a few people waiting in line for you to leave the agency by then, right? Would be the way I would think about it, because you're not going to just build it and they will come. You have to provide some, expertise as rated by peers, and also some references as rated by the businesses that you're targeting's peers, right? Business owners and people that that are going to be like the people you're trying to do business with.
Yeah.
Lookalikes.
That's great. That's great, Chris. And also what I'm hearing in that is also thinking about niching down, meaning if you say I'm an AdWords person and I've done work for X client or clients or whatever, trying to sort of segment that even further by tightening up your message to that target audience, right?
Yeah. And I mean, you'll see what I did when I first launched my site. I wrote a lot of that content, but I did it kind of in a verticalized manner, as well as splitting it up between paid and organic and social. In the services, I've got pages really for the different types of services that I do by vertical, right? And that's, to me, been useful to be able to point to. Again, I'm not bragging about this site at all, but it was useful for me to think about it in two different ways like that, in terms of parsing out the target message.
Yeah. No, that's great. Plus, if, and I'm not saying you, but if a person does it this way, they can also rank for this stuff by segmenting it and thinking about SEO, local, etc. It's a smart thing to do anyway. So no, that's great. Well, this has been awesome, Chris.
They can rank. I'm not saying this site does. Cobbler shoes, right?
Yeah. Well, you get so busy with other clients. I know the feeling. Always have stuff to do on your own, but never can quite always get to it. But yeah. And as we come to a close here, I always like to ask this, Chris. I know you travel a lot. Any interesting or cool or killer travel hacks that somebody might enjoy on their travels that you picked up?
I don't know. I guess make sure you always rent at least a V6 if you're going to be in the Miami to West Palm corridor. Would be one. Think about where you're going. I've got clients between Miami and West Palm, so I go every couple months. And when I first went down there, I just assumed, based on looking how far apart Fort Lauderdale and West Palm were on the map, that it must be about 25, 30 minutes, right? Yeah. It's about an hour to an hour 30, right? So that's one thing that I've learned is as I've started going out on these road shows, is to really make sure that I'm pre-planning my meeting gaps in order to not have to actually go faster than most people on 95, which is usually very easy not to do. You just go 80, 85, and you let the others pass you at 100 or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's you don't want to be stressed. That's for sure. We have enough of that, right?
Is that a travel hack? I've never given a travel hack. I don't know. Does that qualify as a travel hack?
I think the word hack and travel belongs to that keyword. Yeah.
Okay, good.
And finally, any books or any sort of resources that you like to go to, or that you've read recently, or sources that you use that somebody might say, you know what, I'm gonna pick on Chris and figure out what he's doing. I'm gonna read one of his books.
You know what? I am not reading a lot these days, and I'm not writing a lot these days. It's something that I'm trying to get a little bit back into. I had a number of years where I wrote in the industry, and now, the way I put it on my bio page at conferences is that I do most of my writing for clients, which is true. I would say that you would probably be surprised and bored, but the most of the reading that I do within the industry is the journal, roundtable, search engine land. I still get into webmaster world forums in terms of more of as a lurker to see if if there's something to learn there. And I've been trying to spend a little bit more time understanding some of the valuable communication that goes on in the Google Webmaster Tools kind of blog.
Yeah.
The Search Console or Webmaster Help now. The problem is there's so much noise there that, it typically the way that I'll end up there is that I'll think of a particular thing or issue that I need to tackle, and then I'll go search in Google to find, and then I'll put Webmaster or whatever so that I can find the right thread related to that. Is the way that I'm trying to, when recently, for example, there's been more types of warnings coming out in Search Console. There's some good current knowledge that's out there about that, and really kind of using Google to satisfy my direct reading needs is what I would describe is what I do. Is I don't put aside time to read stuff, but as part of my daily and hourly process, I'm going to Google to search to look for second opinions on stuff, for especially if it's coming directly from the possibly slightly filtered mouth of Google. I want to see, what my peers are saying about it at Webmaster World. People like Barry Schwartz and who he's monitoring. It's pretty easy to get information quickly to help you make a decision, especially if you have a strong basis of your own to fill in the blanks.
Yeah. And finally, any particular tool that you are a favorite of, or that you like to use? I'm talking about like software search tools, research.
Yeah, Google Search Console. There's I have the ones that you would typically expect. I have subscription to SEMrush or SEMrush, depending on how you pronounce it. I still also pay for Majestic, even though, some people would argue you can get a lot of that data through SEMrush. I like the Majestic put out. I've just looked at and probably will be looking at a cool Canadian company that I met last week called OnCrawl. They do some sort of bot analysis. There's another company, Revum, that was doing some paid search tool that looked pretty cool that I'm going to be checking out. That I don't have, I'm not endorsing these, but I've just been exposed to a few recently. And another one is Botify that I want to get into a little bit more. Screaming Frog is still a valuable tool for me. And I even still use Xenu Link Sleuth, right? It puts out a lot of bad data in terms of some of the quote unquote broken links, but it can be a useful little tool, like even to just take and generate an HTML sitemap and work from that, but there's some, cool kind of old free tools that are still out there and still useful, like Xenu is a great one, XENU.
Yeah. I actually still use that. We use that. Yeah, no, that's cool.
Nice.
That's great. And Chris, for folks to reach out to you, I obviously put webtrafficadvisors.com up here. Is that the place to go to? Where
sure,
else
yeah. And you can see me on Twitter at Boggs, Boggles. If you reach out at Web Traffic Advisors, I promise to get back to you as soon as possible. And then I'll hook you into my real email, and we can get something and have a quick conversation.
Wow, this is wonderful. Yeah, appreciate you taking time. I know you're busy, so glad to have you on, and great to connect again. And obviously, we're connected elsewhere too, so we'll be in touch. But any final departing words here before we go, Chris?
Well, just thank you very much, Jan, for the time and the opportunity. I like to talk about this stuff in this kind of setting, and it kind of inspires me to go and do some more of this again. It's fun to share and collaborate experiences because we're always learning. We're never gonna And the other thing about our industry is that, the only consistency is inconsistency. It's the classic saying, but, just even over the last few days, we're recording this on April 9 of 2019. In the last 2 weeks, there's been some very volatile activity going on in the search results. And, this is something that's going to be constant. So, the whole SEO is dead kind of thing is kind of funny to me whenever it comes up. So I'll kind of leave with that, is that SEO is not going to die. I think that, that's still as a core marketing set of tactics is going to maybe become renamed because of the bad name that SEO's gotten due to some charlatans out there. But I would stay true to core SEO fundamentals being an important thing to learn to do and to support companies with. And I think there's still a great and long-term job opportunity in our space to grow, or as well to just become an expert in one specific area and deliver on that. So I'm very bullish about, trying to influence more people to get into the industry. Former PR people, former whatevers, come on down and, join the search marketing industry is what I would say.
That's great. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And actually, on that note, do you ever do any local workshops in your area, or
I'm just setting one up. I walk in the woods with our English lab, and I have a few kind of contacts in the woods, as it were, where you'll talk a little bit about business. And there's this one realtor that wants to put something together for a small group, and it's some best practices. Frankly, it's something that I think is very needed across the country, probably because just here in my area, there's been some people that have been doing it for a long time, and they're the experts in the area, but they're using 15, 20-year-old tactics. And frankly, I don't have the time or the will to go out and serve a bunch of small businesses around me. So I do want to kind of maybe look at it as more of an education and training opportunity, and so that they can arm themselves to go back to their agencies and say, hey, I learned this. Why aren't you showing me the search query data? Or why am I, why am I spending all this money on these keywords and not getting any measurable conversions? It's this kind of thing that I want to train to people, so business owners can better demand from their agencies and consultants and small firms what they deserve for whatever they're paying.
Yeah. Oh, that's that
being said, if you're paying $299 a month for SEO, then you probably shouldn't be getting too much.
Yeah. You really need to go to some workshops at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool, Chris. Really appreciate it, guys and gals. Chris Boggs today. We've had a great conversation around search, obviously, search and social, business, entrepreneurship, growing, expanding your organization, whether you're on the client side or the agency side. And there's just a wealth of knowledge here, and lots more to come, obviously, from Chris in the marketplace. But also, we may jump on here again in a while. It's just always enjoyable to talk to experts.
Let's find something else to talk about next time. It'll be fun.
Knowledge. Yeah, this is great. So appreciate it. And thank you, everybody. And we'll talk to you all later. Take it easy.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you.